Is that woo woo? We are back with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic. My wife, I've kind of driven her mad the last few days. I referenced Bub Rub, one of the classic OGs of YouTube lore, and I've been saying his line from one of his videos. I even pulled it up here. It's that woo woo. I've been saying that a lot the last week.
Some neighbors are saying way too loud.
That's only in the morning. You're supposed to be up cooking breakfast for somebody, and so that's like an alarm clock.
That's not only the reference, but I pulled it up because it's a great lesson. We should be up in the morning. We all should. But that has nothing to do with today's episode. Today's episode is actually on the topic of prayer within Vedanta. So Advaita Vedanta, which means non-dual end of knowledge, is a Sanskrit term for non-dual end of knowledge. That's this philosophy. And non-dual, or it means non-dual end of the Vedas, because that's where the Upanishads, philosophical texts that this philosophy comes from, comes at the end of these four philosophical textbooks called the Vedas. All of that background, I covered that in the intro episode to this series, but I mention it because the Advaita part, that's oftentimes left out in just shorthand in these episodes or in the descriptions. But that Advaita part, that non-dual part, that means not to. The reason that philosophers within this lineage would resort to saying not to instead of one is because one implies some border around it. Slight implication, not a huge difference. You could say oneness and get away with it. But these sages were so thoughtful that they came up with a new word 8,000 years ago to describe, who knows how long the oral tradition was, describe a view, an adequate word for view of the world that goes beyond this slight imperfection by saying oneness, which implies there's a border. So they described it as Advaita, non-dual, not two. So in this non-dual philosophy, the end of the philosophy, and I cover this in an episode where we talk about the three radical ideas within this philosophy. First is that there is a supreme being. If you grew up in a religious household, that won't be too groundbreaking of a concept to hear. But to believe it is another completely separate matter. Then the second radical concept within this philosophy is that we're told that none of what we're observing and perceiving is real. It is all like the dream you had last night, where there were walls and hallways and people and shoes and gravity and conversations and drama because you didn't know what was about to happen. It was all a projection of your mind last night. This philosophy says that this is an elevated projection of your mind. It is not real. In fact, our arbitration of what is real is our perceptions. This table is real because I can feel it, touch it. And yet every night we go to bed and have a dream that show us we can't really trust our perceptions on what is real or not. Second radical concept that's put forth by this philosophy, take it or leave it. You don't have to believe it. But that's what the oldest philosophy, in terms of continuous study, oldest philosophy in the world. Therefore, it's one of the oldest concepts within humanity. You see it in multiple cultures. Plato's allegory of the cave, that maps most perfectly to this, seeing shadows, thinking that it's reality. That's the second radical concept. The third radical concept within this philosophy that ties those first two together is this observation that you're this small little old being walking around this big grand world is illusory, is not real. And that there is a supreme being, a God, or as they say in Sanskrit, Brahman, which just means the vast. Great way to depersonify it. Not some cosmic entity that's ruling over things. It's just the vast. And the third radical concept is that you are that. Our ignorance, a projection of ignorance, makes us think we are this small, feeble little entity walking around in this big, grand universe. But what this philosophy says is, you are that non-dual isness, the ground of being, that supreme being. Call it whatever you want. Language is always going to be limited and not even get close to, it's infinitesimal. Might as well be zero compared to the actual thing. It's like someone telling you about surfing and then experiencing it. It could not be more different. But it's one of the best tools we got to try to transmit this philosophy is through language. Better than that is reflection on these three concepts, because I don't know if anyone in history could hear those three concepts and instantaneously grok them. But as you reflect on them, reflect on, okay, I'll entertain, maybe there is some supreme design to this all. You don't even have to think about it as, and in fact, I find it quite confusing to think about it in terms of like a conventional Western view of a personified God. Just think about it as a grand design to it all. Then the second one, maybe entertain. Maybe I'm not perceiving exactly what's going on. So much of our realities come down to what we give our attention to. You're worried about getting fired and some meeting at 4 p.m. with HR and your boss, you will not be able to pay attention to anything else. Maybe that's happening every day. We zero in on a few different things that we think are principal or key, more important than anything else, and that becomes our reality. That's in kind of just a pure logical, no philosophy needed for that articulation. But maybe that's happening on a grand scale, where out of desire, attachment, we can't see what's really going on. And this takes us to this third concept, just to entertain. Maybe you are that which has designed this all, this entire illusion, and what reality is you. That's what this philosophy says. Again, take it or leave it. It's like Krishna at the end of the Bhagavad Gita speaking to the warrior prince Arjuna, and then at the end it just says, I've told you everything you need to know, take it or leave it. Do with it what you will. When it comes to prayer in a non-dual tradition, my favorite quote on this is the Rhineland mystic, which is a great tradition of Christian mysticism. And Christian mystics have existed since the beginning of Christianity. St. Paul to St. Augustine to John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila to Meister Eckhart, Thomas Merton. In the 20th century, Richard Rohr today, one of my favorite Christian theologians, writer of Universal Christ, amazing book, and just phenomenal thinker when it comes to non-dual Christianity, Christian mysticism as it's often called in that tradition. Similar to that non-dual view of there is just oneness. There is not two. There is not some separate universe in you. There's not some separate you and me. There's not some separate God and us. There just is. And you are that isness. It's a simple logical argument when it comes to just a mathematical approach to if God is infinite, then there cannot be anything that is not God. If God is the infinite of infinites, then God can't just stop where your skin begins. There cannot be anything that isn't that infiniteness. And Christian theology is rife with misinterpretations of what that orthodox message was, that oneness. Christ saying, I pray that they may all be one as you and I are one. As he's speaking to the Father, that oneness is found in Christian mysticism. It is found in Jewish Kabbalism, that is the Jewish mystic tradition. It is in the Islamic mystic tradition, Sufi mysticism. It is in various forms of Buddhism, this non-dual view of the universe, that there is just isness, and you are that. The entire philosophy of Vedanta can be summed up in those three words, Tattvam Asi, one of the Mahavakyas, great phrases. The entire philosophy summed up in three words, that thou art. Or as Alan Watts would often say in colloquial language, you're it. So how do you pray in a non-dual tradition? Well, one of those mystics, Christian mystic Meister Eckhart, of which Eckhart Tolle borrowed his name from when he gave himself that name. Meister Eckhart said it best, in my opinion, when he said, if your only prayer that you ever say is thank you, it will be enough. If the only prayer that you ever say is thank you, it will be enough. One of the only prayers at the ashram, a place dedicated to spiritual development, to God, to wisdom, is in the morning saying thank you to the sun for shining. The second daily practice, I've mentioned these a lot in the last few days, but the 3 daily practices are to question everything within Vedanta, to question everything, not take anything for granted, and to study and reflect every day. That daily reinforcement, study and reflection. Maybe reflect on this quote, if it speaks to you. The only prayer you say is thank you. It will be enough. Prayer in the modern world is cosmic beggary. Asking for this and this and this. Asking for more, reinforcing an attachment to the world that, if you're a Christian, an attachment to your life. If you're a Christian, that is an attachment to a life that Christ said, lose your life for my sake, and you shall save it. Save your life, and you shall lose it. That attachment to your life is one of the most egregious things that we can orient ourselves around in terms of spiritual development. And yet that's what so many of our prayers, so many of my prayers growing up was around. Safety, keeping me safe. But if we can reorient our prayers towards gratitude, you recognize that gratitude and desire cannot coexist. And when we reorient to gratitude, it diminishes our desires, our attachments, our agitations, makes us more peaceful, makes us more of a service to those around us with that peace instead of that constant agitation of reinforcing desires. And it aligns so perfectly with that second daily practice. Don't take anything for granted. It elevates our awareness of all of the things that have contributed towards our development, that at first blush we might have thought were an impediment or would have gone against what we would have prayed for. And with proper reflection, we realize, man, I really don't know what I want. So praying for it, reinforcing it, that might be the last thing that I need. But a safe bet you can always make is to reinforce gratitude for whatever it is you're thankful for. Maybe it's a short list today. But I love this quote and this reorientation from prayer as cosmic beggary to a reinforcement of gratefulness. especially encapsulated in this quote. The only prayer you ever say is thank you. It will be enough. From a Christian mystic through an Eastern philosophy YouTube channel, I don't know if that can be articulated any better than that. That's today's reflection in the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Daily Vedantic. This reflection is part of a free repeating 2-year course in Advaita Vedanta. Rooted in the timeless wisdom of the Upanishads, arguably the oldest philosophical texts on earth, you can begin with episode 1, which gives the 15-minute overview of the whole philosophy of Vedanta, or you can join the journey with any episode at any point. But the critical aspect of this course, of understanding and mastering anything, is to study and reflect, even for 10 to 15 minutes on the timeless each day, preferably at the start of your day. As is said in this philosophy, reflection is 100,000 times as powerful as listening. So listen, journal, sit with, discuss these concepts, or ask questions at thedailyvedantic.com with our AI-powered chatbot informed by about 700 episodes here, as regularly as one can if you want to see clarity and peace almost effortlessly unfold in your daily life. And if it doesn't result in a near immediate increase in clarity and peace, then toss aside and feel free to never listen again. One of the things that you might notice is after 7 or 8 days in a row, this doesn't feel like a discipline. This feels like a visit with a best friend to dive into the timeless with daily reflection. Within a few days, it becomes one of your favorite parts of the day. You can also find out more, including news about in-person events in Los Angeles and beyond, at the Daily Vedantic on Instagram or through our weekly newsletter at thedailyvedantic.com. Additionally, check out the links in our show notes for more resources like the books that are mentioned most frequently in the episodes, including Vedanta Treatise, perhaps the simplest and most straightforward read on this philosophy I've ever come across. Until next time, and from the entire team that works on the Daily Vedantic project, thanks for listening.